Just this morning, I saw a video floating around Instagram. It was a video of Sharon Eubank talking about why the church builds temples. And I haven't been able to stop thinking about how brilliantly smart Sharon Eubank is. And you have the chance to hear from her live. Sharon Eubank is the keynote speaker at Lift Up Your Heart, a Magnify event. It's a chance to hear from Sharon in person, up close and as powerful as ever, with her incredible insight that we all love and long for. Please bring the women you know, sisters, mothers, daughters, and friends. Women 16 and older are invited to attend and spend a meaningful Girls' Day at Lift Up Your Heart. You'll leave feeling restored, refilled, and recentered on Christ. The date is Saturday, October 25th at the Mountain America Expo Center in Sandy, Utah. Go to magnifythegood.com for all the details to register. I've always loved primary songs, but it wasn't until I became a mom and felt the way that the Spirit could completely change in our home when I turned them on that I felt somewhat overwhelmed by my gratitude for the composers of these beautiful songs. In addition to their ability to invite the Spirit, I think any new parent who loves the gospel also feels the weight of the responsibility to teach children true doctrine and feels thankful for the help primary songs provide. Shawna Edwards has written some of the most beloved children's songs in recent years, including The Miracle, Do You Have Room, Risen, and Restored. The most recent batch of hymns announced for the new hymn book include Shawna's song, Because. Shawna Edwards is the mother of 5 children who, as an adult, discovered a gift for songwriting. Today, she has over 143,000 subscribers on YouTube. Her music video of The Miracle has been viewed over 7 million times, but she would tell you many of her songs have been written for the one most in need. And it is clear that her greatest professional joy comes from hearing that they've impacted those ones all over the world. This is All In, an LDS Living podcast where we ask the question, what does it really mean to be all in the gospel of Jesus Christ? I'm Morgan Pearson, and I am so honored to have Shawna Edwards on the line with me today. Shawna, welcome.
Thank you, Morgan. It's great to be with you.
Well, I'm going to have to refrain from being a total fangirl during this interview because I have to tell you, Shawna, so I have a 2-year-old and an 8-month-old, and my 2-year-old, when she was just little tiny, we would turn on your songs and it would always calm her down. And it invited the Spirit into our home. And I have always loved primary songs, but something about having a baby and seeing the power of beautiful music that testifies of Jesus Christ, it was honestly incredible to me. And so I am a huge fan of you, and I'm so grateful that you're willing to do this today.
Well, it's an honor to be with you. Thank you.
Well, I wanted to start out. You were at BYU and you were trying out for the Cougarettes. And then you felt that that was not where you belonged. You got this distinct feeling that that wasn't where you belonged. And ultimately you ended up deciding to major in music. And you said something to the effect of that meant giving up dancing in front of tens of thousands of screaming fans and instead spending hours in the basement of the music building at BYU. I wondered if we could start with, what have you learned about the value of the work that no one sees or applauds us for?
That's such a good question. I mean, honestly, I think that most of the important work that's done in the world is work that nobody sees or applauds us for. And I feel like many, many people live and die doing work that they don't get accolades for. I mean, it's being a good parent. It's doing the right thing. It's visiting a sick neighbor. It's getting on your knees to pray. Nobody's applauding that. And I think we need to remember that visibility doesn't equal value. Just because you're visible doesn't mean that what you are doing is really making a big difference in the world. We all have intrinsic worth that comes from our identity as children of God. And that's where the value really comes. And, the flashy living in the limelight stuff that gets valued is cool, but it isn't usually what really makes the difference in the long run. If I had stayed in Cougarettes, I would never have spent time in that practice room because there wouldn't have been time. And I would never have majored in music. And I would probably not be a songwriter. And even in the process of songwriting, I look at it and I understand that people hear the end product, but they don't understand all of the revisions I went through and all of the focusing on one word or one phrase or trying to squeeze out the absolute right words in a place. But that, though it doesn't get noticed, is what makes the song good. And so we all do thankless tasks. And honestly, all of the things that are good are going to last. I think it was Boyd K. Packer who said, nothing good is ever lost. And I love that because I love thinking about the fact that we can do something small that nobody sees, but that it can reverberate throughout the universe forever. It's recorded in our book in heaven, and the angels see it. And we never know what that one little small good thing can do to help other people, because other people will pass it on and nothing good is ever lost.
So good. So good. I love that so much. So I think the best example of that is motherhood or parenthood in general. I think it feels like so much is just not seen. I always say, you go from a job, if you've worked a job before becoming a parent, where people are congratulating you or saying thank you for everything. And motherhood is not like that. So for years, Shawna, you did end up majoring in music, but you did not graduate from BYU. You married your husband and you were, in quotes, just a mother. But you said, looking back, that you can see how even the things that you did during motherhood have helped you with this songwriting career that you now have. Can you tell me a little bit about how you've seen that?
Well, one thing is that I feel like anybody who's been a mother for any real length of time could literally be a professional chauffeur, a professional chef, a tutor, a therapist, a nurse, an event planner. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, because motherhood entails so much varied things. But for me, I only ever wanted to be a mom. I never had a thought in my mind that I would have a career. And I was thankful to my husband for making it possible for me to just kind of live the dream. But when our kids were grown and gone, then I was like, there has to be something else. I can't just fritter away my time now doing nothing. And I'm not saying that people who don't have careers late in life are doing nothing, but I actually, this is kind of a funny little story. When our youngest son left on his mission and all the other kids were gone or married or in medical school or whatever, but when he left on his mission, that summer I bought Major League Baseball ticket on the TV because I thought, man, I'll have all this time. I
have something to do.
That's right. I'm going to watch baseball. And then, I watched a few games and I was like, this is dumb. This is not what I want to be doing. And I had just graduated. I was 50 years old. And that's when, my husband was like, Shawna, you've got this music background. You love songwriting. You know that you're supposed to be doing this. For heaven's sakes, start doing it, So anyway, that's a general answer to your question. But I think one of the specific things is that as I raise children, I notice how they learn so differently. Some are visual learners. Some really love to read. Some just like they learn by hearing things. Some memorize easily and some don't. And a lot of gospel principles are really abstract. And so I felt like if I could write engaging words that were visual and then put together a video, and put the words on the bottom, then children would have all these different ways of learning that song. They'd be able to read it, they'd see the pictures, they'd hear it, and all the different kinds of learners could learn the concept of, for example, faith. Because we talk about faith, but it's such a abstract principle that sometimes the kids don't really know what that means. So, I wrote this song about faith. It's in every honest word we speak and every promise that we keep. And when we help a friend along the way. And these are things that we do that exhibit faith, basically, is what the song says. So I think specifically it was mostly just watching the way children learn. And the other thing might be that all of my children chose sports over music, which was, I love sports, so it wasn't a bad thing. But I was a little sad that none of them really focused a lot on music. And I wondered, maybe there is a reason. Maybe there's just not something compelling to them that makes them want to do music. And I noticed that in primary too, that I had a row of 11-year-old boys along the back when I was the primary chorister 7 different times. There's a row of 11-year-old boys on the back that tip their chair back, and a lot of them don't want to sing. So when I started writing, I told my husband, I want to write songs that the 11-year-old boys want to sing. And we raised 4 boys, and I knew exactly how they felt about some of the music.
Well, first of all, I'm glad to know that you are a fellow sports lover. I also love sports, but I also love music. And I love hearing how you got started, Shawna. I think it's fascinating to hear, because I think sometimes people very deliberately set out to, this is what I want to do. Nothing can stop me from this thing that I want to do. And then other times things seem to happen in a way that could only be orchestrated by God. But I want to touch on something, and then I want to hear kind of more about the story of how this all started for you. But one thing that struck me as you're talking is that it was your husband nudging you along and saying, this is something that you love. What has it meant to you to have a supportive spouse?
I mean, I could talk the whole podcast about this subject because, when you say orchestrated by God, I literally am like, John is the perfect spouse for me. He has been the perfect husband because he's actually really, really musical himself. And at first he funded this whole process and he was willing to do that, which I was very grateful for. Right. But also he makes every song better, every single song. I literally should put his name alongside of mine on every song.
Author.
Yeah. And I tell people all the time, he is my biggest fan and he's also my most brutal critic. He is not afraid to say, and has said many times, I don't love that. Or on Restored, my first version of Restored, do you know that song? Uh-huh. He said, you can do better. And I'm like, what's wrong? And he said, I don't know, but I would just tell you to raise your sights on this song particularly. And the reason Restored is what it is, and it's one of my favorites, is because of John. So it's just meant the world to me to have, he has the exact right temperament. And when things go wrong, he's like, it doesn't matter, just do the next one. Just put out the next song. So I've loved that. He's so great.
I think that's so awesome. I want to go back to you didn't end up graduating because you and John got married. Right. And so years later, you said at 50 is when you graduated with your degree. Right. Hats off to you. I love that. But you finished what you started. And I imagine that there are probably a lot of people listening who may feel like, oh, it's too late for me. that ship has sailed, or that they have, and maybe it's not school, maybe it's some kind of dream that they have, but what would you say to that person?
I mean, I would probably say, are you dead? then it's not too late. It's not too late. We can, and I'm living proof of that. I mean, I did put my first song on YouTube when I was 50, and I told this to a youth group a couple years ago, and there was I don't know, 12-year-old boy, maybe, or 11 on the back row, and he raised his hand and said, "How old are you?"
If this happened at 50,
yeah, well,
returning.
Yeah, this was just a few years ago that he said that. But the thing is that a lot of times when we get to be my age, when people get to be my age, they have more time, they have more availability, their time is more their own. And honestly, I feel like I know so much that I didn't know when I was 30. So there's hopefully a little bit more maturity and wisdom. And I just feel like you're in a better position when you're older. And I would encourage anybody to go for it, even if it feels like, oh, that would never happen. I mean, honestly, when John first said, put that on YouTube, I literally did not know what YouTube was. YouTube was young, and I was like, what? I came a long way, but I would just say, just start doing it for doing whatever it is that you want to do with and for the people you love,
right?
Your family, your friends. Start small and then build from there. That's how I started.
I was thinking earlier, and the way that you responded just now reminded me, I think that is something I've watched people of kind of like my mom's generation, where they finish raising kids and then it's like, well, what do I do now? And so when you were talking about the Major League Baseball ticket, like I think that it's literally like, well, my last kid just went away to school. What do I do with all of this time that I have? And in many ways, motherhood is so all-consuming that people don't have another hobby. So I love your story because you are a great example of somebody who put everything that you had into raising your kids, but that wasn't the end of the story. And I think that that's important for people to not feel like their kids are grown, that's the end, or that it all just has to be being a grandparent. And not that being a grandparent is bad, but I think that there should be many uses of time. When you went back to school, is that when you started writing songs? Had you ever written songs before?
Yeah, I'd written a few, and mostly just like stuff for girls' camp and little fun things like that. I had really only written a few.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you go back to school, you start writing songs. Tell me a little bit about kind of getting to the point of putting that first song on YouTube.
When I went back to school, I had been a piano major when I was young. And I had to practice the piano in the basement of the Harris Fine Arts Center.
R.I.P. Harris Fine Arts Center.
Right.
No longer with us.
Right. But like 4 hours a day in this tiny room. And I knew that if I went home, I would not do the practicing. I lived at home, actually. We just lived a few minutes from campus, so it was easy. But I knew if I went home, I wouldn't do the practicing. So I stayed on campus all day. I mean, I worked in the morning and then it was an all day thing. So they let me back into the music program, which was so kind. And I said, but I'm not practicing the piano 4 hours a day anymore. There's no point. And what can I major in? And so there were a couple of things. And one of them was a major called, at the time it was called media music, but they've changed it to commercial music.
Okay.
And songwriting was my first class. And I loved it so much. And I was old enough to be the mother of everybody in the class. and we had to, it was intimidating because he would give us a subject to write a song on. In fact, our very first assignment was, I'm going to tell you a story the professor said, and then I want you to go home and write a song about the story. And so I did that. And then you had to come back and sing and play that song for the whole class, which was super intimidating to me. But still, I loved writing, and I wrote a whole bunch of things that I still use in my songwriting classes. I retook the class a couple of times. Okay. And then before I could graduate, I had to do a recital of an hour of my own music, which I thought was the best night of my whole life because I was playing with a band. I had a drummer and a couple of guitarists, and I'm like, this is how to perform, because if you make mistakes, nobody can hear them because there's so much going on. But anyway, so it was after I graduated that I had a few songs, and I had this song called Do You Have Room, which was a Christmas song that John said, I think you should put that on YouTube. And for the first few years, I only did a couple of songs per year. And after 2 years, I think, and maybe 4 songs, I had a whopping 30,000 views on my channel, which is nothing. And I had had a couple of really bad experiences with Do You Have Room? And it was like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this, but John was just kept being really encouraging and saying, no, you need to keep doing this. And all of the songs that I wrote in the first several years were songs for people in my life. The Miracle was a song for my primary. More Than Enough was a song for my mother. Do You Have Room was a song for my family. And within every case, I thought, this song will never be heard outside this particular forum. And then they just were. And I tell people all the time, it was like the Lord took my 5 loaves and 2 fishes and multiplied it. He took those songs and he spread them out to lots of people.
So it has to be so crazy now when people tell you, and I'm sure it reaches much further than me listening with my little girls in Philadelphia, but I think that people listen to your songs all over the world and they touch their hearts and they instill faith. So is that just like mind boggling to you?
Sometimes. I mean, absolutely, for sure. Because when I decided to major in music back in the day and left Cougarettes, there was no internet. People didn't have computers in their home.
Right.
There was no YouTube, no media, or no social media. I couldn't even have imagined those things if you had explained them to me. But right. God knew, and he led me along this path. But yeah, I get letters from people all over the world, and it's really, and I would say maybe 35 to 40% of my music that is bought by people or performed by people they are not LDS. So in lots of other congregations. So that's just been both mind-boggling and really fun and fulfilling.
I'm sure. Well, I want to touch on this love that you have for songwriting. I happen to know that you help young songwriters. You do like workshops. Is that right? For songwriting?
We are teaching our second workshop in a couple of weeks. Yes.
Okay. So when you are teaching people about songwriting, I'm curious, what do you think it is that makes a successful, I don't even know if successful is the right word, but what is it that makes a great song?
Oh, man.
I'm putting you on the spot.
I mean, there's so many things. And I don't even know if I can to characterize it. But first of all, it has to be, the lyrics have to be lyrics that people individually can relate to. Mm-hmm. Like if I hear something on the radio and I'm like, oh man, that's how I feel. then I love that song forever. So I think, and I always start with the lyrics. People ask, what's your process? I almost always start with the lyrics. But then there's this really magical combination. And when you put it with music, it's both memorable and singable and repeatable. And that's why songs can just live forever and ever and ever. If we knew the words to I Am a Child of God and only the words, people wouldn't be reciting them. But we know that to a piece of music.
Melody.
Yes, we know that to a melody, and it is sung and resung and resung, and we never get tired of it. I don't know what makes a great piece of music. If I had the answer to that, I'd be way more famous than I am.
Well, you have far surpassed those 30,000 views, which I actually think a lot of people would be pretty stoked about. But I also wanted to ask you, so this is one thing that was, like I said, amazing to me becoming a mom, because watching a child latch on to a primary song or watching it completely change the feeling in our home, even when she can't understand the doctrine behind the song. And so I wondered, what is it, do you think, that makes primary songs so powerful?
Well, I kind of just said it. I feel like, primary songs generally have just the basic principles of the gospel in them.
Mm-hmm.
The basic principles of the gospel have power to tax all your brilliance forever, because they are both simple, but they are so rich and deep and meaningful, and you carry them with you throughout your life. So we're talking about basic principles of the gospel set to a melody that you can always remember. And when you learn a primary song, you always remember it. I can still name in order the books of the New Testament because I learned Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, the Acts, and the Romans when I was in
First and Second Corinthians.
Right.
Yep.
There's no way I would know those in order if I hadn't learned that song.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, and I think that what you just said touches on the interesting thing, I think, about trying to teach a 2-year-old the gospel, is that I feel like my testimony in the very most basic little scripture study that we try to do, in trying to simplify it to a point that she will understand it, I feel like my testimony gets deeper. And I don't even know like how that works. It seems counterintuitive.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's definitely been a blessing for me. You mentioned that you had some bad experiences with Do You Have Room? I love that song. There was a mix up with copyright on the video that you put on YouTube, and you ended up having to take it down.
Yeah.
I feel like this kind of thing happens so frequently when you're trying to do something that's good. And it has to go back to the whole idea of opposition in all things. I imagine that is not the only time that you have experienced opposition. Right. So I wonder, what have you learned about how much Satan would love for these songs to never reach people?
I don't think I can say it any better than you just said it. Satan would love these songs to never reach people. Satan would love any good thing you set out to do to not happen. And so he works to prevent that stuff from happening in whatever way he can. And you mentioned, Do You Have Room? And I did have, the video went viral. The first video,
which is
went viral. Yeah, which was really crazy. And I had embedded my own email at the end of the video, which is also really crazy and dumb. But like, if you want the music, and I just gave it away. If you want the music, email me at, and I put my personal email. And I got emails from all over the world from people who wanted like 100 emails a day.
Wow.
For those 3 weeks that it was up. And then I had to take it down. And then people were mad at me because they were planning on using it like in their Christmas Eve mass and all of these places. But I also had another experience that went right along with that with Do You Have Room? And that's that I entered it in the church song contest and it won one of the awards, and they had this big concert. So this is the very first live performance of one of my songs. And I was just like stoked. They had this big concert on Temple Square, and a choir from BYU, Idaho sang all of the music, and they were fabulous. But they had given my song to a soloist, which it was a solo. And I don't know if he was a last minute stand in or what, but man, he just slaughtered it. It was unrecognizable. The melody, the words, the rhythm, everything was wrong. And I was just like so mad. I was so mad that happened, and so disappointed that I literally came home and I had made a bunch of really beautiful copies of it and given them to friends for Christmas. But I took all the ones I had left over and just stuffed them in the bottom file drawer. And I'm like, I'm never doing another thing with my music, because it was so disappointing. And so, yeah, I mean, I've had some opposition, and opposition can do two things. It can stop you or it can make you stronger. And I feel like, we can, and we often do this. We get done with something. Let's say you taught a Relief Society lesson and you get done with it and it was a good lesson. But what do you think of and what do you focus on?
Everything you said wrong.
That's right. Or the thing you meant to say that you didn't. Or the fact that you didn't compliment somebody's comment. Or, those little things. And that is Satan trying to stop us from doing it and going and having the faith that we can do it again. And I think it's really, really funny because we just had a grandson. They live up in Spokane, and he came to the BYU basketball camp. He's 13. And he had a bad experience in a game. In one of his last game that he played, he had the ball with 7 seconds to go and had a chance to win it and didn't realize that there were only 7 seconds on the clock. And he dribbled the ball out instead of putting a shot up or giving the ball to somebody else. And when the buzzer rang, he was mortified that he had done that. And he texted his parents, and he's like, I'm terrible. He actually said, I suck. And if you want to take that out of if you want to delete that, but that is the best word for how he was feeling. He's like, I suck. This was at the end of the day. And they're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. What did you learn? This is how you have to approach it, is finding out what you would learn. And at the bottom of the text thread, he said, oh, by the way, they gave me the league MVP.
It's typical.
So he had a fabulous camp. He had played well the whole camp. And what did he take away? I suck.
Right.
Because he'd had that bad experience in that he made that one mistake in a game.
Right.
So anyway, opposition comes and you can focus on it, or you can just say, I'll just try to do better the next time.
Your grandson's quote could be quoted by me in reference to my abilities as a mother. So I appreciate that.
I mean, we all feel that way about stuff.
So I wanted to ask you this. You mentioned, I mentioned earlier, you were trying out for Cougarettes in college, and you said that you had this distinct feeling that you didn't belong there. I got the impression that was not a feeling of like imposter syndrome, but instead revelation, like inspiration.
Yes.
That was not the place for you. Right. You also said that you have dealt with, though, from once your song started having some success, you were like, oh, well, now I have to repeat this. And people have expectations of the kind of song that I'm going to put out. Right. And what if it's not a good one? And so I wondered, what would you say? I found it interesting, kind of the contrast between these two things. One in which that feeling of you don't belong here feels like inspiration and is probably a good thing. And the other of you don't belong here, imposter syndrome, negative thing. So how would you say that you differentiate those two?
I mean, the first answer might be time. I am not certain that when I felt like I didn't belong in Cougarettes, that I knew it was inspiration. It's kind of only looking back where I finally, followed what I felt and then saw that that was the right thing for me, that I can say that it was inspiration. But one thing I will say about imposter syndrome is, and the difference between them is, it's not helpful. It's just, you're a fraud. People are going to find out. Imposter syndrome doesn't open any other doors. It just shuts it. It just shuts the doors. And you think, I can't do this. I'm terrible, so I should just give up. But inspiration opens other doors. It might be, you don't belong here, but then it will also be, this is where you belong. Eventually, sometimes that takes time.
Okay.
Or this isn't the right path for you, but this is the right path. So I think that's probably the difference, is inspiration gives you new opportunities for growth, and imposter syndrome just shuts you down.
Okay. That's perfect. That makes complete sense. The irony to me of what you were just saying is this idea of you are a fraud. That idea coming from Satan makes complete sense because he is a fraud.
I love that. I've never thought about that.
Well, we just were talking in Sunday school yesterday about how Satan does such a good job of giving partial truths. So you'll have something that's like 90% true, but then 10% just sends it spiraling into something that's actually not good for us. And so when you said that, I was like, oh, that makes complete sense that is the message that he would try to send, because he is fraudulent himself. Shawna, you have now written some of the most beloved church songs of the last decade, I would say. And one thing that I loved about your interview with Lizzie is that it was so clear, not that you had to come out and say it, but that it was so clear just in the testimony that you shared that you wrote a song about miracles. And anybody listening, I'm sure, has heard that song. I love that song so much. And I love it especially because, shout out to my girl, Kristen Scott. Her verse on that is so good. But I loved hearing that you, as somebody that wrote a song that we all love about miracles, believe in miracles. And so I wondered, how have you seen miracles in your life, Shawna?
Oh my goodness, I've seen so many miracles. I mean, there are miracles in ordinary everyday life. We just get so used to them. We don't think of them as miracles. I mean, life itself is a miracle. Breath is a miracle. The sun rising is a miracle. The fact that you and I are talking and we're not anywhere in the same area, right, and then other people are going to be able to hear this, that's a miracle. The fact that I can put a bunch of random ingredients together and come out with cookies. I mean, all of those things are miracles if we think about them. But I feel like there have been, I mean, I have maybe 65 songs on YouTube, and there isn't a one of them that was not accompanied with multiple miracles. I mean, I could tell you a million of them, but I feel like that there, and you may have heard this on the Lizzie podcast, I feel like there are song miracles where someone is writing a song and they are given the words, or they come up with the words that are just the perfect words for someone else to hear at a specific time. And I believe that the Lord sends that song to that person. And you just wouldn't believe how many people write to me and say, your song saved me. I literally had a man tell me one time that, and he said this in front of a whole fireside that I was giving. He said he became suicidal, and he had several children, and he left his house thinking that he was going to end it all. and the miracle came on his playlist in his car. And he said, I drove around and listened to that song over and over and over and over until I felt differently and I went home to my family. I mean, I have a cousin who has a severely autistic son. And he told me this story. He said he'd never sung a word, not one word. And he'd be up there on the stand at the primary program, and his mouth would remain shut the whole time. All the other kids are singing. So he says he's 11 and it's his last primary program. And they closed with this song, The Miracle. And there's probably more miracles with this song just because people know it. It's my most known song. But anyway, this kid, he wasn't really singing it. But what they had done is they were singing it at the end, and then they had assigned one of the older primary girls to sing that last tagline by herself, the miracle that rescues you and me. And she was going to come up to the mic. Well, as the song went on, this kid started to move. My cousin's son started to move towards the mic. And my cousin was like, oh no, what is he going to do? And he stepped in front of that little girl and he sang the last line himself. And he had never sung before. And then, they apologized to the girl and her parents, and everybody in the ward was like, no, that was a miracle. That was worth witnessing. That was so sweet. And so, I mean, the filming of the videos and just the writing process and being given specific words. And like when I wrote Always Be My Savior, I fought for every single word of that song. I really struggled to get the right words, but there was a line that came to me that was just given to me. It was a gift. And it was, even when the feeling isn't there, and this was the line, if waiting is the cross I have to bear. I feel like that's one of my very, very best lines, because we all wait, right? We all wait for blessings and pray and pray and pray, and they don't always come. And even if they're good things, they don't always come. But that was a line that needed to be in the song, and the Lord just gave it to me. I didn't have to work for that one line, and it's the best line.
That's amazing. Well, it's interesting to me. First of all, I think what you were saying about a song being sent to someone in their moment of need, I think obviously church songs can do that, but it's amazing to me that sometimes a completely secular song can be True. An answer to prayer as well. But I wanted to share with you that I know that you've said that the Living Christ Project was one of the hardest things you've ever done. Yeah. But if for no other reason, there was a young woman, myself, who was going through a breakup with my now husband, but there were 3 weeks where we did not speak. And during those 3 weeks, I listened to those Living Christ Project songs over and over and over again. And I look back on that time and I'm like, that was a huge blessing. Like the peace that I felt during those 3 weeks, when I should have felt so devastated because I thought I had found the person I was going to marry and it wasn't working out. I felt complete peace and knew that everything was going to be okay. And so from me to you, thank you for that little miracle that I felt like I experienced because of your hard work. Your song, Because, was just announced as one of the songs in the new hymn book. And I feel like we're all so used to the green hymn book and the songs in the green hymn book. Yeah. And so it takes a little bit of, I feel like, adjusting. And I've heard good ideas of how people are introducing these songs in their ward. Actually, our new ward, my husband and our family just moved, and our new ward is having each family in the ward sing one of the new hymns. And I thought that's such a good idea. But I wondered, why are you personally excited for a new generation of hymns?
Well, I mean, they've included, to start with, I love some of the great old Christian hymns that they've included, like Amazing Grace.
Yes.
I mean, that's one of the greatest hymns of all time. And I am like, it's about time that it's in our yearbook. It's so perfect. And I love the new styles, like This Little Light of Mine. Yep. I love that that's in there. And I don't know if you've heard the church's recording of it.
I don't know that I have.
On the church music app. Oh my. It's so adorable. And you have to listen to the whole thing. It's a kid singing it, and it's just so adorable. And so I think there was like an African hymn that was okay in this last batch. I feel like as a church, we need to broaden our music horizons a little bit, and we need to make music joyful and robust and exciting again.
Right.
Because it's really easy for all of our hymns to sound like funeral dirges in Saturday. And I just wish we had just a little bit of Baptist
little pizzazz,
hallelujah in it. You know, it just feels like we could do so much better in our music, and that music would be meaningful and it would enhance our worship services so much. So I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled they're doing a new hymn book, and I'm excited to see all the new stuff come out.
Well, Because was one of my favorite songs on an old EFY CD. So I am excited to have it now in the hymn book. Shawna, it has been such a delight to talk with you. My last question for you is, what does it mean to you to be all in the gospel of Jesus Christ?
I think we're serving at the MTC right now, and we just got called about 3 months ago, and it's so great. And our branch president just said this really simple statement to us. He said, my wife and I have just tried to put the Lord first every day. And that's such a simple way to think about it, putting the Lord first every day. But, you know, I ran across a talk by Elder Christofferson recently, and I love his talks, and I love the way he puts things. And he said, I wrote this down, true discipleship is a state in which the gospel of Jesus Christ penetrates one's heart and soul, where the gospel becomes not just one of many influences in a person's life, but the defining focus of his or her life and character. So I think, you know, the defining focus, making that the most important thing, and trusting the Lord enough to do it his way, to do things his way, to say, okay, like Nephi, I don't know the meaning of all things. Nevertheless, I know that God loveth his children. That's what it means to me, to trust him enough to do it his way and make him and his gospel the defining focus of our lives.
Beautifully said. Shawna, thank you so much. I think that you are such a blessing, and I'm grateful to be able to feel the spirit of the music that you write in my home, and now to be able to meet you. So thank you so much.
It's been great. Thank you.
We are so grateful to Shawna Edwards for joining us on this week's episode. We are also grateful, as always, to Derek Campbell for his help, and we're thankful to you for listening. We'll look forward to being with you again next week.